one of those things where everything that could go wrong does go wrong. And yes, their plan is not it's not the brightest plan, but it's like a really fun ride.
And tell us about your character, Leila Forbes. Where does she sort of fit into this? Is she linked to the main character, Travis Bennett?
Yeah, so I play Leila Forbes, and she is like the resident cop. She's new to town, and she gets assigned to kind of a silly, I guess, petty crime, right? And in investigating this petty crime, she gets connected with Travis and Jimmy, the leads of this. And it turns out to be connected to a much bigger scheme. So essentially, I'm the cop that leads the charge to solve the crime, solve the thriller crime that exists in this world. And I kind of play like the straight man in this, where I'm the audience perspective on how crazy the whole thing is. Like, are you guys really serious? You really think that this is going to work? So it's nice to kind of balance out some of the zany, wild antics of the boys with like a much more grounded character, which is Layla, and eventually get to a place where everyone's happy.
Yeah, and Brianna, we also have the girl next door vibe as well, played by Victoria Justice in terms of that. And there's that comedic humor in terms of the pursuit, in terms of dare I say, punching above your weight, what Travis is trying to do in terms of that. And there's almost that sort of humor in terms of that as well, and that makes so that sort of teenage, sort of young adult sort of crush brings a good lot of comedic humor in its own way, and I imagine it was very fun for Travis and Victoria to play off each other.
Yeah, I mean, like their scenes were really wonderful to watch, and like they had a lot of chemistry and banter, and just generally the whole time, the whole cast, like it took us a lot to actually get through scenes because we would laugh in the middle of them all of the time. Um, yeah, and it was very clear that this character is punching above his weight, and that's part of the humor of it. That's part of why he has to go through all of these lengths to get her attention.
Yeah. And I believe this movie was filmed in Utah back in 2021. And obviously, back in 2021, we're in the, I dare I say 2000, we're just towards the end of the pandemic. And then obviously, you had the writer strikes and everything like that. Did you get to your movie finished before the writer strikes began in terms of that?
Yeah, so thankfully we did. It's been like a really, I guess turbulent couple of years, obviously, in entertainment, but we filmed this towards like the end, well, the middle summertime of 2021. It was during COVID, so we had to do some COVID protocols and get tested and wear masks. So like we were still kind of dealing with those challenges, but we finished it before any writer strike or any actor strike. So thankfully we were able to complete the film before we had even more challenges to deal with on in entertainment world in here. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
Brianna, did you have any idea when you finished up in 2021 when it would see the day of light, or in terms of that, or is it a mystery wraps? And when did you become aware that it was going to be brought and screened in 2025?
Well, I actually had no idea. Sometimes you do a movie and it just disappears. So like I didn't know. We did screen it in 2021, and there were like conversations about it being released in 2022 and so on and so forth, but nothing came of that. So it was one of those things where I was like, I had a great time. If people see it, great. If people don't see it, like we had a really special experience on set. But actually, a couple of weeks ago, I found out that it was going to be released very, very recently, probably in March, like mid-March. I was like, oh, it's coming out. That's great. Oh my gosh. So I knew probably when like most of the cast found out, which was recently.
Yeah, and there's it almost when you see that that's coming out now, does it bring back a flood of memories from that sort of time? Because you mentioned the comic humor, so I imagine it was one of those enjoyable vibes, and going to work every day was sort of entertainment on set as well, in terms of due to the comedic humor, it wasn't really a labored sort of working day.
No, no, it was super fun. Like it was, like I said, every time we would come to work, it would just be like jokes. Like Jimmy and Travis are hilarious. So it just felt like hanging out with a bunch of friends, like we're all acting childlike and childish, and then we'd have to like put on our serious face to the scene or whatever. But yeah, we had a great time. The whole crew was wonderful. The director was wonderful, who is his first time directing a feature
Yeah,
film.
Stern, yeah.
Yeah, he was really open to all of our suggestions and like all of our talent, all of our improv. So it just felt like a really creative space where all of us could express and be silly, and it was super fun. Like I want to do a million movies like this because it was just fun. Like I had a great time the whole
Yeah,
time.
you almost get a feel of that super bad type of element out
Yeah.
of it, but also as well, to the arch villain, we get to see there's a more sinister element to that, and that's played by Joel McHale in terms of that. And if you couldn't think of a more funny guy, a more stand-up comedian guy, to try and take him seriously as an arch villain is sort of very hard to do in its own right, given the more like you mentioned Travis and Jimmy being a bunch of laughs, but Joel McHale takes it to the whole new level.
Extremely hilarious, but I think it was like so cool to see him tap into some of the darkness, and it was still funny, you know what I mean? I think he was a perfect villain for this because he has that humor, so we didn't want this movie to get too dark or too heavy, and to kind of keep it like, on above water in terms of the comedy. It could get really dark, like anything like this could go in a completely different direction, and I think that Joel handled it so masterfully, like being a lovable villain who you were rooting against, but you still like, the sinister didn't overtake the humor and the charisma.
Yeah. And Brianna, before we came on air, you mentioned one project in the pipeline that might be coming our way in the near future. You might enlighten all our audience and listeners about that.
Of course. So on June 25th, I have another film that's coming out called Stranger in My Home. That will also be released day and date on digital. So it'll be like Amazon, iTunes, all that stuff. It stars Sophia Bush, and I'm playing another cop, except this time I'm playing a detective. So the year of the
I
cop.
say that's by the sound of that, and there's no comedy in that. I say much more sinister and horror or sort of effect.
Oh, yeah, there's not an inch of comedy in this one, but it's also a really good ride and like a lot of fun, and a great project as well that I'm really proud of.
Yeah. And Brianna Price, I'm going to turn it over to you now for the final 30 seconds. You might enlighten all our audience, all our listeners, why they should go to their cinemas en masse to watch California King for the next week or so. And when they do, when they sit down, when they have the popcorn, the Pepsi, the Maltesers, relax in that recliner, the screening comes on, and up pops California King. And Brianna Price, what's in store for them?
So you're in store for a lot of fun, a lot of laughs. It feels very effervescent. It feels like you're watching a movie with, your old pal that you grew up with. And it's just really silly. And I think like at this particular moment in the world, we could use like a laugh and some silliness and some frivolity. You'll also get, like we said, a little romance, a little suspense, a little action, but mostly it's a fun time. And when I saw it in the theater, I like left smiling, and I hope that everybody who sees it leaves smiling and feeling a little bit better about their day and better about whatever they're dealing with, takes them away from anything that's too heavy.